It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the couple found guilty of killing their newborn baby. Constance Marten and Mark Gordon went on the run with baby Victoria in January 2023. By the time they were found, 7 weeks later, Victoria was dead. The couple have 4 other children, all of whom had been taken into care. And police say Victoria's death was completely avoidable.
Even in her passing, she was degraded by the way that she was left, you know, in a bag.
Also ahead, 2 very different crises, putting pressure on bosses at the BBC. The broadcaster has cut ties with Gregg Wallace after 45 complaints about his behaviour were upheld. And it has apologised for the Gaza documentary, featuring a Hamas minister's son as its narrator, with Ofcom now investigating whether viewers were misled. Plus, we'll have the latest from Essex after 4 people were killed in a plane crash at Southend Airport. And we'll bring you the key moments from Lord's and an incredible finish in the 3rd test between England and India. All that to come, and much more on the UK Tonight. A couple who went on the run for 54 days with their newborn baby have been found guilty of killing her. Constance Marten, a wealthy aristocrat, and her partner Mark Gordon, a convicted rapist, had 4 other children who had all been taken into care. The newborn, a girl named Victoria, died at just a few weeks old, and her body was later found inside a shopping bag in a disused shed. Our correspondent, Ashna Hernag, has the story, and just to warn you that you may find her report distressing.
The tiny frame of newborn baby Victoria, fragile and failed by her parents. Constance Marten and Mark Gordon risked her life to keep her all to themselves. This is one of the last times she'd be seen alive.
You'd be giving us a lift, would you?
This was the moment the manhunt for them began, after their car caught fire on a motorway in Bolton in January 2023. Gordon was talking to Mr. Hudson, who filmed this video.
What's the nearest rest stop?
Nearest
Rest stop.
the nearest rest stop.
He and his son had pulled over and tried to help, but it became clear the couple wanted to be left alone.
She sort of says, do you want to get on your way? And I said, no, well, we can wait a bit if you want. No, you'd be fine. We'll be fine now. So just as I'm walking back to my van, I put my hand on top of the baby's head, and I just said, God bless, and then got back into our van and drove off. Now, if I hadn't have touched the baby's head, maybe I wouldn't have felt the way I felt.
It's thought Mr. Hudson is the only person aside from the couple to have interacted with the baby.
It did lie heavy on me. I didn't like my thoughts at that time, because I was still thinking, what if the police had come? What if I'd have stayed?
The car had been packed full of clothing, food, notebooks and the placenta from the birth. What followed is the couple spending more than 50 days on the run, often using the cover of darkness to travel hundreds of miles across the country, living undetected, all with their newborn. They spent hundreds of pounds on taxis, travelling from Bolton to London to Essex and the south coast, before choosing to live off-grid in sub-zero temperatures. They ditched a buggy hours after buying it, and according to the prosecution, carried Victoria in a supermarket shopping bag instead. It was in this same bag that her body would later be found. For weeks, Miss Marten carried her around in her coat, hiding her from prying eyes. Their decisions, the jury were told, were selfish. They had been previously warned about the dangers of living in a tent with a newborn, but families say they had little choice and had to keep moving. This is Karen Satchell, Gordon's sister. She believes the spotlight on them was too harsh.
I think they were traumatised as a couple and didn't know what to do and deal with it. And it's very, very heart-wrenching to find that Can you imagine how you would feel? Nobody can actually imagine that unless they've actually lived it, you know, and the trauma now that you're under surveillance and underneath all this scrutiny, and then the baby dies. It's like, wow, oh my God, what are we going to do now?
She says her younger brother had always been private about his family life. Karen had never met Marten.
I know he called me once and said he was with his girl and he's had another baby, so I was like, where is she? Bring her, let me see her, you know. But he says, yeah, one day I'll come by, but he never actually did show up, and when he does, he shows up by himself.
She found out the couple were missing at the same time as everyone else.
It came on the news and I saw the pictures of them, and we all kind of freaked out, like, call Mom. But we never would have found anything of the sort. I don't know what went wrong.
It was for the jury to decide whether Gordon knew right from wrong. The retrial heard extraordinary revelations about his past offences as a teenager in the United States.
He did get 40 years imprisonment even as a 14-year-old and was released after 22 years. He went into a neighbour's address and he was armed and he attempted to rape her. And then on another occasion he went into another property armed, but there was a male occupant this time.
That man was Patrick Nash.
I had my yard tools out on the back porch. He came in with a shovel and he attacked me with a shovel.
Speaking from his home in Florida, he recalled the night an armed Gordon broke in.
My wife always had premonitions of somebody standing at the end of our bed, and she would wake up screaming, and I'd have to calm her down. But this particular morning, she woke up and there was somebody there. So as I was getting out of bed, I was attacked. I had to go have stitches in my scalp. I think I got like between 12 and 17 stitches or staples. We were both upset, you know. It was very frightful. We didn't sleep well for quite some time.
Gordon met Marten in 2014. Victoria was the couple's 5th child. The other 4 are all now in care.
Right, where's your child?
When they were eventually arrested at the end of February 2023, both repeatedly refused to answer questions about the baby's whereabouts.
We talk about a baby's been found. We have found a baby.
Baby Victoria's body was found in a shopping bag inside this shed, covered with rubbish and dirt. A jury has now found that her parents' actions led to her entirely avoidable death at just a few weeks old. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
Well, this was a case that was extremely difficult for police officers, medical professionals and the jurors who sat through 2 separate trials. I've been speaking to Detective Superintendent Lewis Basford from the Metropolitan Police, who led the investigation into the death of baby Victoria. Can you talk to us about the difficulty of finding the couple and baby Victoria? People watching tonight will remember the days and weeks that passed since that initial announcement there was a nationwide manhunt. They were difficult to find.
They were very skilled in what they did, you know, and actually were putting tactics together that we would expect some of the highest criminals to do, you know, in organised crime. We know that obviously, and as reported and we spoke about at the time, you know, they had a substantial amount of cash that they'd taken out and had with them. We saw that in the taxi journeys that they took, you know, £400, £500, £600 at a time. But as well, you know, they lived off grid. You know, there was no mobile phone usage. There was no booking of hotels or Airbnbs. They lived by the cash that they had, and ultimately only came to the surface, really, for the public to see them when that cash had run out.
The health and condition of the baby during the time that they were on the run, we know so little about her. Not even her birthday, not even how she died.
We've always had to take the account to a degree of what Constance and Mark has given us, even though we differ in our positions of when baby Victoria was born. I think what was clear, hopefully, in when we discussed and we were doing the appeals, that actually it was baby Victoria at the heart of this. We never referred to this as a hunt for Constance and Mark. It was always about welfare and the welfare of baby Victoria, whose name we only came to, obviously, after we'd arrested them.
What was it like for your team to look for baby Victoria, knowing the inevitability of what they would find? Because I know you're all professionals, but that would have been extremely difficult. Nobody would want to be in that position. Can you just talk me through how this has affected your team as people, not police officers?
I'd be wrong in saying that sometimes we don't get personally attached, because we do. We still remain that professionalism as we go through. But, as I said, I'm a father. It affected me to a degree, partly because you didn't, although you have to account for the possibility that baby Victoria wasn't with us. I think we'd all worked so hard under the mindset that she was, and that we would find her, we would safeguard her, and ultimately that would be the best outcome, irrespective of mum and dad. We would find baby Victoria, and hopefully she would have a happy, healthy life in with whoever or wherever she ended up. It wasn't the case in this time, and I think that certainly at the time it took a few weeks and months to get your head around that.
What shocked you most during this investigation? Because some of the details that have come out from the trial have been horrific, not least the circumstances with which you found baby Victoria in a shopping bag under rubbish. We know that the baby had passed for some time and the couple were taking her out. They went to Brighton for the day with baby Victoria, with a dead baby. What has shocked you most? Because so much of it is jaw-dropping.
And I think it goes back to, that Constance and Mark both, attest to the fact that they were doing the best for her. But even in her passing, that she was degraded by the way that she was left, in a bag, not wrapped, but covered in nappies, dirty bottles, cans. There was no human side to them in that, and so I will never personally correlate to the fact that they did have that love and care, because that love and care should have been endless even after her passing.
During the couple's retrial, the jury heard details of their journey across the country for more than 7 weeks in the depths of winter and how they were eventually tracked down. This report from our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire contains distressing details of child neglect.
Multiple sightings, a £10,000 reward for information, and a massive police hunt.
Get off the lift, would you?
And still, Constance Marten and Mark Gordon managed to travel hundreds of miles from the north of the country to the south. This is how they evaded the authorities. Constance Marten was reported missing on the 5th of January. That same evening, the car she'd been travelling in with partner Mark Gordon caught fire on the M61 near Bolton. Van driver Ken Hudson had been behind them on the motorway. He pulled over to help them and called the emergency services. The couple left on foot, heading towards Bolton.
You'd be giving off the lift, would you?
They left behind a placenta wrapped in a towel and Martin's passport, along with a bag of more than 30 mobile phones, used nappies, a cat in a pet carrier and a Bible. A local resident gave them a lift into Bolton, where they were seen at the Bolton Interchange bus station, before deciding to take a taxi 35 miles to Liverpool, paying £80. From there, they flagged down another taxi, which took them 270 miles across the country to Harwich in Essex. Driver Ali Yaria said the woman was shivering, and he saw a baby inside the woman's jacket, wearing only a nappy. In Harwich, they checked into a Premier Inn using a false name, Thomas. Hotel staff said Marten paid in cash and seemed, quote, quite distressed. After being asked to leave in the morning because they couldn't provide proof of identity, they moved to the Friat Hotel for the night. They checked out early the next morning. Marten was seen outside Harwich Port 2 hours later. A member of the public confronted the couple, having seen a news report about their disappearance. Dale Gosling said that a baby was wrapped inside Marten's coat and that he heard crying. The couple then took a taxi from Harwich to Colchester. Then, later that morning, another taxi from Colchester to East Ham in East London. CCTV showed the couple getting out of the cab with their baby girl Victoria, Marten cradling the child under her jacket. Later that day, Gordon bought a buggy in Argos before meeting Marten in a kebab shop. She assembled the buggy and then put the baby in. They then took a series of taxis around London, abandoning the buggy and, prosecutors said, transferring the baby to a Lidl shopping bag instead. From North London, they headed to the port town of New Haven, arriving at 5 in the morning. A CCTV camera at a petrol station shows them wandering around in the early hours, before heading towards the South Downs on foot. They weren't seen again until 4 days later. Marten was back at the garage, buying sweets, snacks and petrol. They claimed the baby had already died by this point. The next sighting was on the outskirts of Brighton. Gordon was spotted emerging from a tent in the woods in Stanmer Park. 2 weeks later, the Met Police offered a £10,000 reward for information. But it was more than a fortnight before witnesses reported further sightings. One near Hollingbury Golf Course in Brighton. Another in the Coldine Lane area of the city. And back in Stanmer Park a day later. Witness Pauline Mason told the court she saw a mother with a baby who she believed was dead. On the 20th of February, the pair were captured on CCTV, trying and failing to break into Hollingbury Golf Course and rummaging through the bins. A week later, they were back in the same area. This time, though, they would not go unnoticed. Their run was about to come to an end. They were spotted in a local shop, buying food and withdrawing cash. A member of the public who recognised them from media reporting called the police. And a few minutes later, the couple were arrested in nearby Stanmer Villas.
You're under arrest for child neglect. Where is your child?
They were repeatedly asked where the child was.
Where's the child? Is the child alive?
That day, the police launched a large-scale search for the baby. More than 200 officers covered an area of 7 miles by 13 miles to look for the baby, from where the couple were sighted to where they were arrested. Over the next few days, an area of 90 square miles was scoured, using dogs, drones, thermal cameras and a helicopter. On March the 1st, police found baby Victoria's body in a disused shed near the allotments. This is the moment when baby Victoria's remains are found inside a Lidl shopping bag. There may have been little hope at that stage of finding the child alive. But this was an ending more disturbing than anyone had thought. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
Oh, well, Ashna Hirnag joins me in the studio now. And Ashna, you've been covering this pretty much from the start. So much of it distressing. We were just saying there, you know, that police officer that found baby Victoria, like, you can't even comprehend. It's just the most tragic ending to the most tragic of cases. Can we talk about the trial? It was the second trial that we got the verdict on today, and it was the gross negligence manslaughter. Let's talk about the character of these two and the behaviour of them both during this trial, because that in itself, well, it sums up the character of these two.
It does, I think, in one word. I think many of the journalists would agree, but also some of the counsel and people involved in the court system would describe it as chaos, I think. I mean, first of all, you're dealing with quite an extraordinary, unlikely pairing. You're talking about Constance Marten, who comes from an extraordinarily wealthy family. I mean, to put it into some context for people, her father was a page boy at late Queen Elizabeth's wedding. I mean, there is serious money involved. Now, she did distance herself from her family, even through accusations at them about them having hired private investigators when she first started getting with Mark. And then Mark himself, Gordon, convicted rapist, served years of time in prison in America. And you're right to talk about the extraordinary aspects of this case when those two came together, because, first of all, there was still a lot of love between the two. I mean, in the dock, it was really fascinating to watch them exchanging notes, sometimes having physical contact, but often there would try and be a dock officer separating the two. But they displayed quite a lot of disruptive behaviour, played to the sort of justice system. I've never seen defendants behave in that way. They almost showed a kind of contempt for the criminal justice system. They'd often, not turn up, decide they didn't want to be there that day, and it obviously wasted jurors' time. And jurors, of course, wouldn't have known any of this. This is all happening behind closed doors, and we're only now being able to report it. There was one instance, I remember that Constance said that she was feeling tired, and she said, could we pause things because I wanted a coffee because I was feeling tired. That was, some of what she was displaying. And I think, Mark Lucraft, KC, the Recorder of London, the highest criminal judge at the Old Bailey and in the UK, he showed incredible restraint. I mean, he said to Constance at one stage, I've sat as a full-time judge now for 13 years and I've never had that sort of attitude you've shown me by anybody. And I think that sort of sums it up.
And it got more bizarre, did it, when Mark Gordon actually ended up representing himself?
Yes, we heard from Mark, not in front of the jury, but he said he'd sacked his barrister. I mean, it was told to the jury that the two had parted ways. It was actually the barrister's decision to sort of walk away, and that decision came to a natural end. But there was this extraordinary moment when Mark, who isn't a lawyer, was cross-examining Constance Marten, who was in the witness box. So there was that strange moment where he was standing up asking his wife, alleged wife, that they've been together for so many years, lots of questions, and he'd often, when the jury weren't there, go on lengthy rants from the dock. He'd often complain to the judge about things seeming unfair. So it is no surprise, really, that they are going to be trying to pursue an appeal. We understand that the sentencing for these two will happen in September. But just to tell people about the moment the verdict happened, we heard that
because they were both in court.
They were both in court at the time, and they had been, attending from the prisons they'd been held at. And we'd heard there were unanimous verdicts. The foreman for the jury was asked, have you got unanimous verdicts for both defendants, to which they said yes. When the court clerk asked the defendants to stand up, they refused to do so. And once the verdicts were read out as guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence, Constance looked at Mark almost quite intensely, and Mark sort of closed his eyes, slumped his head to the back of the dock and sort of looked quite defeated. And during a bit of legal argument afterwards, for which the press were present, Constance decided to leave the dock at that point. She just didn't want to be there. But the next moment that we are going to see these two, perhaps it's their decision whether they want to turn up or not to the sentencing, but will be on the 15th of September.
OK, Ashna Hiranag, thank you. In other news today, BBC bosses are under pressure once again tonight over two distinct crises. The corporation has admitted it missed opportunities to deal with Gregg Wallace's behaviour after an investigation upheld dozens of complaints against him. And the corporation has today apologised for a Gaza documentary which used a Hamas minister's son as a narrator. Ofcom are now opening an investigation. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has this report.
The sun might have been out at New Broadcasting House, but BBC bosses finding it never rains, but it pours. As staff ate their salads, the corporation having to digest not one, but two reports.
Have you ever wondered what you'd do if your world was destroyed?
One into its editorial integrity over this documentary on Gaza.
Our four best chefs, they will go straight through to the next round.
Another on whether it allowed inappropriate behaviour to slide on its top cooking show, finding itself in hot water.
I asked the board directly why nobody had resigned or been fired over the series of failures that we've seen recently. What I've had in response is an action plan that is aimed at addressing the reasons why some of these failures happened and making sure that they can never happen again.
A report into Gregg Wallace's behaviour commissioned by the production company which hired him, upholding 45 of 83 complaints made against him, including 16 claims of sexually explicit comments, 12 claims relating to inappropriate jokes, 1 allegation of unwanted touching, 4 claims of culturally insensitive or racist comments, 3 claims he was in a state of undress, and 7 allegations of bullying. The presenter saying in a statement he'd faced trial by media, fuelled by rumour and clickbait. None of the serious allegations against me were upheld, he said. I challenged the remaining issue of unwanted touching, but have had to accept a difference in perception. I am deeply sorry for any distress caused. It was never intended. While his recent diagnosis of autism is cited for his difficulty in reading social cues, there's been some backlash from within the neurodivergent community.
I think we do need to call out that blaming misconduct on autism, it just throws the autistic community under the bus. And, you know, this is a moment for us to reflect on how we talk about disability, power and accountability. And it's super important that we don't allow the weaponisation of neurodivergence to shield influential men from scrutiny.
The BBC has now said it's sacked Wallace, but that's not the only drama.
The BBC has always said nothing is more important than trust and transparency in its journalism. So while the report into Gregg Wallace might make headlines, the huge fallout over the narrator of a documentary it commissioned about Gaza turning out to be the son of a Hamas official has been a bruising storm to weather, with criticism coming from all sides.
Would you help people?
How to Survive a War Zone was ultimately pulled by the BBC from its iPlayer. The much-delayed report into what happened, finding the BBC breached its editorial guidelines on accuracy. The CEO of BBC News apologising on Radio 4.
I'm sorry this happened. It was a mistake.
Let's just be clear. No one in the BBC knew that the father of this narrator was a Hamas official.
No, exactly. That's what the report finds.
Should they have known?
Yes, they should have known, because their questions should have been answered at the many times of asking by the independent production company.
And when they weren't answered, they should have been pursued.
Yes.
BBC Director General Tim Davie apologising for a significant failing, pledging the corporation would take action to prevent it happening again. No hope of sweeping today's drama under the rug, clearing up after a difficult day. The BBC forced to admit faults and make changes. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, joining me now, Max Goldbart, international TV editor at Deadline. Max, good to have you with us this evening. Where should we start? Should we start with Gregg Wallace? A couple of crises to talk about, just the latest for the BBC. Over 40 complaints upheld about the presenter. How did it get to this point?
It's one of those days when you're covering the BBC that it is difficult to know where to start. In some senses, this was chronologically one of 3 scandals that was dealt with throughout a period of about 7 hours today, and it's not a particularly good look. I was quite taken aback by the simple number of substantiated allegations. 45 is a very, very high number. There was around BBC News, which is independent of the BBC, their reporting around this has uncovered even more. I think overall across the piece has been around 70, but you never know if the reporting from a journalistic perspective will match what comes up in a report like this, which was commissioned by an independent law firm, and yet 45 is a very high number and leaves quite a sour taste, really, in terms of trust in the BBC and trust in BBC presenters.
Yeah, one of the issues is the mistakes that have been made by the BBC. One of them is allowing Gregg Wallace to get away with this kind of behaviour for so long. But the other question is the BBC's handling of these mistakes. And in the case of Gregg Wallace, you know, MasterChef is made by an outside production company, by Banijay. And, you know, the BBC then air that. They could have got ahead of this, couldn't they, in terms of these direct reports perhaps would have gone into Banijay, who should have been more responsible. But the BBC just haven't sort of got ahead of the narrative. Even Gregg Wallace putting out statements seem to have got ahead of them.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there are a couple of things at play here, because there's the BBC News reporting on this, and there's the way that the BBC, the broadcaster, has behaved. I mean, it's relatively surprising that it was Banijay, the MasterChef producer, and not the BBC that was conducting the review, that's been doing the work over the past few months. Television is quite complicated, and it's more complicated than just the BBC making and producing all of the television that appears on the screens that people enjoy every evening. MasterChef is certainly a very popular show. One might argue that the BBC should have taken it in their own hands and conducted the report themselves. Gregg Wallace's statements have actually heavily implied that it is the BBC that's doing these statements. he doesn't take much umbrage with Banerjee, the producer. They come in for praise in some parts of his statements, but it's the BBC that he's really taking issue with. He's really jumping upon what one might perceive to be a bandwagon around the way that the BBC treats its presenters, that the way the BBC has been taken over by a certain agenda. But in terms of getting ahead of this, yeah, I mean, things could have been moved on quicker. The BBC could have done its work itself. The BBC will argue, as pointed out in the report today, that its head of entertainment, Kate Phillips, spoke with Gregg Wallace several years back. That was in 2018. There was only one complaint after then that was substantiated, so only one of 45. So I guess some in the BBC would say they're doing their job well. Many others would say that after that 2018 sit-down with Gregg Wallace, he should not have been working from then onwards, and yet...
Yeah, the phrase could have, should have keeps coming up, doesn't it? I just want to ask a final question about the Gaza documentary that got pulled. The BBC didn't know that the narrator of that documentary was the son of a Hamas minister. The CEO of BBC News was asked, but you should have known. And she said, Deborah Turner, she said, yes, we should have known. Again, it's about checks and balances. Where does that leave the BBC on trust and the trust of the national broadcaster?
Totally, because it is checks and balances, isn't it? Like the BBC and Deborah Turner sounded audibly frustrated then in her response to feeling that they should have known. And the report today into the Gaza documentary, distinct from Gregg Wallace, did show that the production company was asked by the BBC on several occasions about links to Hamas, the narrator's links to Hamas. And they were not forthcoming with an answer. But nevertheless, it comes back to the BBC, and to have these things happen so quickly within each other is a problem for perception. The BBC talks constantly about needing trust from the public. And I think reading so much about these two scandals in such quick succession, along with the Bob Vylan Glastonbury scandal, which we haven't even come onto, is a big problem.
OK, Max, really good to hear from you tonight. Max Goldbart there, international TV editor at Deadline. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Still to come on the UK tonight, 4 people have died at Southend Airport after a small plane crash seconds after takeoff. We'll have more on that story for you.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Four people are now known to have died when a small plane crashed at Southend Airport yesterday. All those on board are believed to have been foreign nationals, and the airport remains closed. Sky's Rachel Venables has this report.
It left a line of debris in its wake, the now molten shell of this small aeroplane, which crashed on Sunday afternoon, killing everyone on board. One of those on the flight was Chilean nurse Maria Fernanda Rojas Ortiz. Reports claim it was her first day on the job. Sky News understands the pilot and co-pilot were both Dutch men, and a male European medical professional was also on board. The Air Accident Investigation Branch is working alongside Essex Police to work out what happened to them.
If there are safety lessons that can be learned, we will make recommendations that aim to prevent a similar accident occurring. Now that the emergency services have secured the site, we will be able to begin gathering the evidence we need to understand the circumstances that led to this accident.
The crash itself happened moments after takeoff, erupting in a fireball, sending black smoke billowing into the sky and grounding all other flights.
We were due to fly to Alicante, and we were actually sitting on the runway on our plane. Passengers were loading, it was about 4 o'clock, and my husband was looking out the window and he saw a huge black smoke. Obviously, we've got to think of the people who were on the flight. We're not worried about our holidays so much. We're very fortunate, so it's just very, very sad.
The plane was often used for medical flights, transporting patients or organs. Earlier that day, it had flown to Greece and Croatia and was due to head back to the Netherlands.
From the outside, this airport seems to have fallen silent, with no flights able to take off or land and passengers diverted. But on the other side of this runway, investigators will be working around the clock, sifting through the wreckage of this plane to gather the physical evidence they need to try to understand what caused the crash with such devastating results.
It might be some time before we understand what caused this tragedy, but investigators will be keen to get the answers they need, both for the sakes of the family, friends and colleagues of those who died, and for the wider aviation industry. Rachel Venables, Sky News at Southend Airport.
A postman is to serve at least 23 years in prison for the murder of his girlfriend. Phoenix Spencer Horn was found dead at the home she shared with Ewan Methen last November. A warning that this next report from our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis contains distressing content.
This is what their love looked like on social media.
God, I never loved one like you.
The picture-perfect story where Phoenix Spencer Horn talked about finding her soulmate in Postman Ewan Methen. A 2-year relationship that ended in evil here at their flat on the outskirts of Glasgow. He stabbed his 21-year-old girlfriend 20 times using 3 knives, mutilating her naked body, beheading her. She wasn't found for days.
I think I stayed out the house for about a week after that. I couldn't even sit. It was horrific.
Neighbour Tony Brown lived next door.
Did you hear any noises or bangs?
I had a bad smell in my house the night. The early hours of the morning she was found, basically just before I went to my bed. There was a bad smell in my kitchen, basically where the walls joined together. Horrific, absolutely just, it gives me shivers thinking about it, if I'm honest.
Instead of calling for help, Methen hid her body in the hallway, searching pornography, buying drugs, and even texting Phoenix's worried mother from her phone, pretending she was alive.
Crazy to think I stayed next door to a monster like that. What scares me the most is knowing that she was kind of lay there and I was in here oblivious.
Methen murdered his partner hours after moaning he felt lonely when she was at work. He claimed to have blacked out on drugs during the frenzied knife attack before being caught driving Phoenix's car and eventually phoning 999 days later. Phoenix joins a growing list of women killed at the hands of their violent partner in this country. Not many will disagree with Ewan Methven's own defence team here at court, who suggest he will be seen as the personification of evil.
I have rarely read such outpourings of grief as are contained in the victim impact statements from her family, who have endeavoured to put into words what can never truly be encapsulated. The sadness and the deep sense of loss they all feel and will continue to feel thanks to what you did. The way you treated this innocent young woman after her death meant that her family did not even have the comfort of saying goodbye to her. I know that nothing I can say or do and no punishment I can inflict will ever be enough.
So this is my daughter, Emily.
Fiona now campaigns against gender-based violence after the death of her daughter, Emily.
There's another mother and father that have just been plunged into utter hell. Somebody had said to me, if God came to you and said, I'm going to give you this beautiful daughter, but you'll only have her for 18 years, and then we need to take her back, would you still want her? And I would take those 18 years and go through the pain rather than have nothing. And although just now that probably offers no words of comfort for Phoenix's parents, maybe one day it can.
He is now behind bars while her loved ones also face a life sentence in a case where trust turned into tragedy. Conor Gillis, Sky News at the High Court in Glasgow.
So to come on the UK tonight, a child has died in Liverpool after contracting measles amid warnings about the dangers of declining vaccination rates.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, DC.
A child has died in Liverpool after contracting measles amid public health warnings about declining vaccination rates. The virus is on the rise in the area, with a number of seriously unwell children admitted to local hospitals. Well, joining me now, Professor Matthew Ashton, the Director of Public Health for Liverpool City Council. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You've been on high alert for this for a number of weeks now. It seems to be a particular concern for the northwest of England. Perhaps you can tell us what you think's going on.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we're definitely seeing an increase in the number of cases locally. Our local children's hospital, Alder Hey, has reported seeing at least 17 positive cases of measles since the start of June, and they're obviously concerned about the impact that has on their ability to provide normal health services for our children and young people. And also, if we're seeing 17 cases at the front door of Alder Hey, that's an indication that measles is circulating in the community right now, so it is a worry for us.
Yeah, and it's believed that this is linked to low vaccination rates, particularly in the city of Liverpool. Why is that? Why is there a lack of uptake of the MMR vaccine?
So vaccination rates have been declining nationally for about the last decade. As you know, World Health Organization recommends 95% herd immunity levels. In Liverpool, we're down below 74%. Nationally, it's a bit higher than that, but it's still far too low. And the trouble is then when you have unexposed populations or unprotected populations, the potential for measles going rogue is very high. I think there's lots of reasons why vaccination rates have dropped. Clearly, we're on the back of a pandemic with lots of conversations about vaccine fatigue and disinformation, misinformation about vaccination in general. But I do think it's more complicated than that. I think we have to recognise that life for our communities has got significantly harder over the last 10 years, and people are working really hard to make sure they can still pay the bills, put food on the table, look after loved ones, and sometimes healthcare, routine healthcare appointments are just not top of the list of things to do.
Yeah, particularly when you think you've got young, healthy children. But the seriousness of measles needs to be underlined because this is highly infectious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things is we haven't seen measles cases like this for a while. So people assume it's an old disease or it's one that's gone away, but it couldn't be further from the case. And as you say, measles is highly infectious. You know, one case of measles can infect up to 15 other people. We know the transmission period for measles is around 10 days. So there is huge potential for measles to spread quite easily.
So what is your message to the public this evening? I know that a couple of weeks ago you wrote to schools at nurseries about this issue.
Yeah, we're trying to raise awareness of measles in the city, trying to make sure that people are aware that measles is still with us and it's circulating, and that actually it's a really nasty virus. No matter who you are, if you're not protected, you can catch measles and it can do you harm. It's particularly a risk for the very young, or if you're pregnant, or if you've got an underlying health condition. But the reality is anybody can get measles and can get ill from measles. So we're very much talking about the importance of the disease and the fact that it's still with us, and then the simple steps that people can take to protect themselves from illness.
Yeah, let's do our public service bit. You know, what are the symptoms of measles?
So measles traditionally starts with cough, sneezing, you sometimes get red eyes around it, sore eyes, and then it tends to develop into the face rash behind your ears and then down across the rest of your body. One of the issues with the symptoms of measles is it can be very similar to other childhood illnesses, but if you're in doubt, don't go to A&E, don't go to your GP. If you've got measles, it's highly infectious. So if you're in doubt, phone your GP and have a conversation with them, or phone NHS 111 and talk to them about your symptoms.
Yeah, I was going to say about what you should do if you think your child has measles. I was watching some of this social media from Alder Hey Hospital in Liverpool, and they were saying, of course, you know, the first thing you do when you're worried about your child is take them to hospital. And that, you know, might be the worst thing to do in this case, but definitely to contact a health professional by phone. As you said, it's highly infectious. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. That's Professor Matthew Ashton there, the Director of Public Health for Liverpool City Council. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Still to come on the programme, a reaction as England win in a tennis finale against India at Lord's in an enthralling Test series.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Sky News, the full story first.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
They are pushing forward, trying to get people to disperse.
What Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me.
Is that your opinion?
It is. It is.
They were serious, coordinated attacks.
It's an entire generation that will have to contend with the horrifying impacts of this conflict. The number of patients is increasing.
It's been quite some day.
Hey, what country are you
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country?
You've gone viral.
I've ever had such a reaction.
It's just incredible.
Since the Oval Office meeting, have they reached out to you?
If Ukraine asks for help and its allies decide to help, then that's the end of it.
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
A historic day here today.
Beth Rigby from Sky. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
There could be some more painful decisions to come.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hello, welcome back. It's time for a look at the sport. Rob Jones is here, and it's a certain anniversary today, the 6th anniversary of England beating New Zealand in the Cricket World Cup final. But for those who love Test cricket, today at Lord's is proof that it's still one of the most thrilling forms of the game. What a finale.
Yeah, I think you could have all the T20 tournaments in the world, but still not top the sort of drama that we saw this afternoon, where the game had ebbed and flowed for 5 days and it was still doing exactly the same as we got down to the final session of the Test match. Let's start at the end, shall we, and see that final wicket that fell. Shoaib Bashir playing with a fractured left finger. He won't take any further part in the Test series, but that is quite the way to go, isn't it? That's his final contribution. You can see all that strapping. That was what took England to victory. A very strange way for Mohammad Siraj to get out. Middle of the bat, bouncing back, clipping a bail. And Ben Stokes, the captain, spoke particularly afterwards of Bashir's bravery playing on with that injury.
Shoaib Bashir, you know, broken hand, going out there, taking on, you know, the responsibility with the bat. You know, we thought that those few runs could become crucial at the end. Obviously, it was looking like they were going to be that way, and coming on, taking that last wicket, I mean, just written in the stars. Like, what an absolute warrior to come out here and do that for his team.
Oh, exciting stuff. England now 2-1 up in the series, of course. Can we talk about Jofra Archer? Because so many people questioning the decision to bring him back. And by his own admission, he's had a long, dark road to recovery from injury. But that decision by Ben Stokes proved to be a success in itself, right?
Yeah, and I think the key thing is that no one was questioning the decision to bring him back because of his ability. Everyone knows that Jofra Archer is a brilliant bowler. You were watching him this morning, and even on the telly, you can see that change of pace, the speed that he bowls at compared to the rest of the England attack. Look at that brilliant delivery to remove the danger man, Rishabh Pant, early on in the morning. Another wicket hit. Athleticism for the caught and bowled as well from Jofra Archer. So he's back after 4 years away from Test cricket, and certainly the England bowler very pleased to be back in the Test folds.
And what's that phrase, England always find a way? And for the captain, you know, Ben Stokes, it was very much like that. You know, there's always so much scrutiny on the captain, particularly in matches like that. But again, England found a way, Ben Stokes found the right solutions.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that 6th anniversary of England winning that dramatic final against New Zealand in 2019. We all remember the Ben Stokes innings that day. Still in my mind, that where he sticks his bat out and the throw flicks and goes to the boundary and apologised. But he is the man for a crisis. Interestingly, Joe Root spoke today and said the tougher the situation, the more that Ben Stokes seems to come to the fold. He takes, look at the face, 2 spells of 10 overs in the heat. He is a gladiator. He was exhausted by the end, but he saw his team over the line. So that is England, as you said, 2-1 up in the series with 2 to play. That little bit of a gap between Old Trafford. I think everyone will need a rest. Let's just take a little look
Spectators alike.
at the rest of the day's sports news as well.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
I'm sorry, I just have a German passport. Hopefully I can convince them and show them and prove them that I'm proud to be the English manager.
For only the 3rd time in history, the FA have turned to a foreign manager to take charge of the men's England team. Thomas Tuchel follows in the footsteps of Sven-Göran Eriksson.
If we don't do results, of course, they will try to hang me, but even if I was an Englishman, they hang me. So that's...
And Fabio Capello.
A winner with a capital W. That was the template. This is the man.
When the news about Tuchel broke, there was a mixed media reaction. Some in Tuchel see a Champions League winning manager and the best candidate available if you want to win a World Cup.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Time for a quick look at the weather now.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, we're in a cooler, more unsettled spell, but it is going to turn warm again from Wednesday. Central and southern Britain will be fine this evening, bar the odd shower in the southwest. Elsewhere, Ireland and Northern Ireland will be showery, while northern Scotland will see more general showery rain moving in. Ireland, Northern Ireland and areas around the Irish Sea will see prolonged rain or showers tonight, while northern Scotland will stay wet. The rest of Britain looking fine, bar a few showers near Channel coasts. It's going to be cooler than it has been recently and windy for the south. Central Britain will see showery rain tomorrow morning, some heavy and locally thundery. Ireland and Northern Ireland, meanwhile, will see early rain giving way to more scattered showers. You can expect the odd shower elsewhere.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
That's all for the UK tonight. We'll return tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next is The World with Yelda Hakeem. See you tomorrow.